Welcome to the Search for Wellness podcast, where we embark on inspiring conversations to explore the many facets of health and well-being. I'm your host, Pooja, a certified fitness instructor, the co-owner of Beyond Body Fitness Studios. I'm also a qualified health coach, breath coach, and proud to say, a cancer coach. My personal journey towards wellness took a profound turn when I faced a cancer diagnosis 2 years ago. Despite leading a relatively healthy lifestyle, I realized that my understanding of well-being was limited at that time. This unexpected challenge ignited my quest for knowledge and a deep desire to restore balance and harmony into my body and life. Now, I'm here to share the wisdom and insights I've gained, because what's the point of all this knowledge if I can't share it? In today's fast-paced and stressful world, prioritizing our physical, mental, and emotional well-being is more critical than ever. This podcast aims to delve into a wide range of wellness aspects, from longevity, fitness, and supplements, to alternative practices like homeopathy, acupuncture, and sound therapy, as well as nutrition, diet, and innovative therapies. Through this platform, I'm committed to helping you make simple and sustainable changes that seamlessly fit into your daily life, empowering you to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life. Let's embark on this inspiring journey together and meet our special guest today. All right, guys, I have a special guest here with me today. Meet Juliet, the visionary founder of Greenspoon and dynamic entrepreneur, partner to Wiz, and proud mother of Saskia, Berit, and Rose. Her journey with Greenspoon began in 2016. Passionate about food, traceability, and empowering women in business, Juliet dedicates her energy to supporting fellow entrepreneurs. In her professional domain, she thrives within product sourcing, marketing, growth, and design. At home, Juliet seamlessly balances getting a workout in, dedicating her time with her partner Wiz on the regenerative Shamba, and embraces her belief that food can change the world, devoting 80% of her headspace to culinary innovation. Welcome,
Thank
Juliet.
you so much, Pooja. What an amazing introduction. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here today. I believe that we have a lot in common when it comes to talking about the harmful uses of pesticides in Kenya, and about the concerns of all of this, and about the sustainability of the environment. And I know it hits hard for you, and you're really passionate about this. And I'm so honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
And we're going to go straight into it, because I have lots and lots and lots to learn from you today, and I'm sure everybody else wants to learn lots and lots from you. So first thing I wanted to ask you is, what was the reason behind creating Greenspoon? And I know everyone knows what Greenspoon is.
Yeah, but the story behind is often quite interesting.
Yeah.
And it's definitely directed how we've grown the business. So it was, let's just dial back and imagine yourself in 2014, 2015, when I had Saskia and started weaning her and started to become a bit neurotic about what I was putting in this little body. And I think you're a mum too. You understand, like, when you become a parent, or when you have someone you need to look after, you suddenly realize how much you have to look after yourself and how much responsibility you have for this small human that has been reliant on, for instance, your breast milk or formula for 6 months, for example, and now needs to be fed food. And so I found myself doing my own research and asking, where is my food coming from? Because if I know where it's coming from, I can make a judgment about whether it's safe. And there's such a lack of transparency generally in food systems around the world. But I persisted and I asked a lot of questions, and I realized there was this big gap. And I'm not necessarily that commercial in terms of, I didn't have a background in retail. I didn't have a background in e-commerce. I had a background in marketing and digital platforms. And I'm a social anthropologist. Well, that's what I studied at university. So I'm fascinated by human behavior. So that was my background. But I often think that's what makes entrepreneurship interesting, is people come with a certain naivety to a new industry with a new idea. So the idea really was to provide customers with this transparency around where their food comes from, and also to do the vetting for them, because I realized how hard it was to go to any shop and ask, where does this come from? So that was really what drove me. And as I was having conversations with suppliers, artisanal nut butter makers or well-hung butcher, for instance, I realized they also have real challenges coming to market because they have a great product and they're really good at producing that particular item or range of items. And then they can come and sell it at a certain point. They can be selling maybe directly to the customer. They can be selling at farmers markets and so on. But then to transition to formal retail, i.e. having your products on supermarket shelves, requires huge capital investment and is really challenging. So I felt like, okay, there's a space where I can provide the customer with full transparency about where their food comes from, and a space that helps the supplier, the small supplier, get to market. So that was the idea.
Amazing. And honestly, I love Greenspoon. I use it all the time. I've discovered so many things because of Greenspoon. Like, I didn't know about Grounded before. I discovered Grounded on Greenspoon. I discovered all these organic fruits and vegetables that I didn't know about on Greenspoon. And this is the thing, is that there is this gap between trusting trusting the source. Where is my food coming from? And we're in a point in our life where we should really be finding out and discovering where our food is really coming from. I have also been listening to your podcast, and your podcast is amazing, and they're so informative on where our food is coming from. So I think you're doing a fantastic job, and I am so inspired by everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Pooja. And I think this idea of like where your food is coming from is first and foremost so important for your own health, but it also has this huge impact on overall sustainability in the environment. So it is a question we should ask ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And talking about sustainability, I know that you're a big advocate on sustainability. And what are the efforts that Greenspoon puts into making sure that they're a bit more sustainable towards the environment and towards controlling what is actually being sold on your platform?
So I'm really proud to say that it's very central to how we operate. And what we do is break sustainability down into two parts, really, for us to keep it simple. And I think you have to have some degree of simplicity in order for it to apply to all parts of the business. So we break it down to social impact and environmental impact. And what I'm trying to move towards now is not just being sustainable, but being regenerative as a business. So trying to move towards a place where we can say we're actually helping regenerate the planet and human health.
Wow.
Rather than just be sustainability to me just indicates we're going to sit at a certain point and we'll be sustainable.
Exactly.
We want to go beyond that. But so we look at social impact in terms of our customers' health and our responsibility towards our customers' health. We've never been sort of like dictatorial about what you should or shouldn't eat in terms of macronutrients, or we're not a dietary advice platform, if you like. So we have the whole range. You've seen the ice creams are there, but the kombuchas are also there. So we want people to make good decisions, good informed choices for themselves and their families, depending on what their goals are. And because every human, of course, is very individual, but we have a responsibility to make sure that everything on our platform is safe. Let's just start there. It's not going to be contributing to health issues down the line. So that's the first bit of social impact. And then the other part of social impact is who we support in the value chain and the supply chain. What we've done is shorten supply chains by working directly with smallholder farmers and really understanding what are their challenges, how can we support them. We have an amazing in-house agronomist called Brian. He goes out to the farms, visits them, and will advise farmers who are using products that we don't approve of on our platform. He will advise them how to transition, if they're interested, into organic and regenerative, or at least safe. So we work a lot on the supply chain and see that, we see quite a lot of businesses grow with us. So we're like their initial listing. into formal retail, and then they grow with us, and then they move on to list in other places, which is also really exciting because the business has grown, it's employed more people, you're having an effect down the chain. It's not very easy to measure, and it's something we need to measure for B Corp and things like that, but we can see that it's happening. We need to collect the data. So that's social impact. We also do other things like Homeless of Nairobi, collaboration over the festive period, and working, for instance, on projects like where we met actually, Little Lions, where we support the school in Kibera, and just trying to think outside the box on like how we can, reduce waste and rechannel it, right, to places or people who might really benefit. So there's the social side, and then there's environmental. And environmental ties very closely with the smallholder farmer work that we do and the farms that we choose to support. So regenerative farming is obviously regenerating the soil and health of the planet. And that's our first, we really love to go towards regenerative for everything. It's not possible yet in Kenya, but we're getting there. So that we have regenerative chicken and beef on the site, lamb as well. And on the vegetable side, fruit and vegetable side, we really sort of go organic and regenerative. It's tiny at this point, but I think what we're showing as a platform is that there is a market. Mm-hmm. And so farmers who want to transition can come to us and we will list their products. And we are not punitive about the terms, and we pay fairly, we pay on time, etc., so that they can feel confident that this is a good decision to make. Because when farmers transition from conventional farming with a lot of chemical inputs to organic, they often see a dip in yield. Mm. And many smallholder farmers simply can't afford that. That's a really tough decision to make. So then they need to know that for sure that route to market is guaranteed when they've made the transition. So that's something that we're really keen on. Also on the environmental side, I'm always really proud to say we were the first delivery company to get an electric van.
Oh, amazing.
That was back in 2019. We only have 3 today because it's not the easiest thing to import, sadly. But we hope to increase the fleet. And then we've also partnered with Rome and M-Copper to have electric motorbikes, so that about 40% of our deliveries are carbon neutral.
Amazing.
So that's really exciting too. And then we just, we try to look at all the elements of the business. We measure our power use, our water use, diesel for the generator, sadly, fuel use. We've converted most of our fleet to LPG, so that's also more environmentally friendly. And then we go down to look at the packaging as well. So we deliver in kikapus and brown paper bags, which we've always done.
Yes.
But I think it's also something that we love working with suppliers on. So like, shall we talk about your packaging? Could it be different? Who can we introduce you to in our network who could supply you with better packaging? And a really exciting thing that we did in 2023 was working with Greenspoon, who produce bagasse punnets out of sugarcane. So those are something that the customer could literally throw on their compost and it will compost. There's no plastic lining or anything.
Oh, wow.
So it has to be covered with cling film to keep the vegetables in it, and that's not ideal, and we're working on something there, or Anita's working on something there. But that's the kind of thing where we don't just stop at like, oh, these are our products on our site. We try to think beyond that and support our suppliers to make really good decisions as well.
And obviously the magnitude of doing all of these little things takes a lot of effort out of you, obviously, and I'm sure that it drives a lot of energy through you. You have to really, really want this so badly to put so much effort into it. And I must say that's amazing. Like, almost people forget about these details, right? So I would have forgotten about the shopping bag or about any sort of plastic waste that is coming into it. The cars, electric cars and stuff and everything. So that is amazing. And I, again, if it wasn't for this platform, I would have not even known about this either. And I'm sure that most people won't know about this either through this.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak a little bit more about our issues that we are facing here in Kenya when it comes to organic farming, regenerative farming, just the information that people need to know, the importance of why is it important to buy organic. If you can't get organic, what can we do about it? Yeah.
So at the moment in Kenya, there's we have a lot of pesticides being used. And I think if I'm not a farmer, right? So I never assume that I can understand all of the challenges that a farmer would face in the tropics with climate change as well. However, when we see reports, I don't know if you've seen the Pesticide Atlas by the Heinrich Böll Stiftung Foundation. So they brought that out last year. And they said that 76% of the pesticides being used in Kenya are highly hazardous. So what that means is that they could have a direct impact on our health with diseases like cancer, nervous system issues, unborn children being affected. It's scary stuff, right? Really scary stuff. And that's 76% of the pesticides here, right? That's a huge number. And 44% are actually banned in the EU, right? So that's like quite a key thing. So that's why when we started doing fruit and veg, we actually initially looked for farms that were also exporting, because we know they have to meet EU standards.
Exactly.
So I think there's this tricky balance with pesticides where there are really dangerous ones out there. Are they dangerous in and of themselves, or how they're being used? And does the smallholder farmer get the right support on how to use these pesticides? So we did quite an interesting exercise one day. We went to an agrovet, sort of undercover, to see like, are these stories, or, we should go to see what actually happens. So I didn't go because obviously I would ring alarm bells all over the place. But one of our happiness delivery officers went, and he put a phone in just slightly undercover. And he went in and said, I'm a tomato farmer, and this is what my tomatoes look like, and I think I need something. And, the agrovet handed a couple of options to him, and there was no advice about this is how you need to use it. This is the post-harvest interval that you must adhere to. So that means you've sprayed it on and you need to wait. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 2 months until you harvest that fruit, because otherwise, or fruit or vegetable, because otherwise you're still going to have residues. And the residue is what is so hazardous to us. And our HDO was able to just buy the product and walk out. And then we had a look at the label on the back, and the information is there, but you need to have good English, and some of it's quite small in font. So I think that's where, there are potentially some issues. And as the consumer, we have the power to shift the narrative, right? And to empower the farmer to know that the consumer really does care now. Is this product safe? Let's just start with, is it safe for me? Do you know where it's come from? So those two are so interlinked, right? But wherever you do your shopping, whether it's on Greenspoon or anywhere else, I'd urge everybody to just start asking those questions. Because even by asking them, you're triggering, if we were all to do it, everybody listening to this podcast, it would start to trigger a little wave, right?
Exactly, and a ripple effect.
Exactly, ripple effect. And it's sending a message to the retailers that, hey, we need to have answers. People are starting to ask us, where's it coming from and is it safe? And if we do that, then we start to empower the farmer to understand that actually, if I was to transition, there's a market there, and they really want my organic produce. So from my perspective, if you can shop somewhere where they can give you that information, we obviously do it, and I think there are some shops around Nairobi that do that. That's amazing. And organic is obviously the most preferential if you can get it, but there are still some products that we haven't even listed that are organic, right? So that's still something we're working with the farmers all the time. Could you grow this for us? Could you grow that? Can you do more fruit? Fruit is tricky. We're really beginning to see that effect now with some of the partnerships that we've had over the last year and the work that Brian's doing out there. And I think that's just where we have to start, as any consumers, like, buy the best quality of everything that you possibly can. And if you eat meat, buy the best quality and eat a little less meat. Because buying meat that's possibly got other products in it, like hormones or antibiotics to help the animal grow quicker or to prevent them from getting diseases rather than treating a disease, then you're not actually doing your body any favors really by eating that stuff. So I think, we have some big challenges in Kenya, but one thing that's going to put a lot of pressure on everybody is this EU Green Deal, which is coming in 2030, which specifies that Kenya has to have a certain percentage of farms that are using approved pesticides and using them in the correct way and so on and so forth. So that is going to put pressure on everybody in a certain way from the EU. But actually, I think we shouldn't be waiting for the EU to tell us what to do. We should educate ourselves as citizens and people who want to live a good life, right? Yeah. So I loved what Mark Hyman said when we were at his talk. Yes, he talks about living to 100, but you don't want to live to 100 if you live for 30 years in a wheelchair, maybe debilitated and unable to do all the things you love. You want to live to 100 and have a good life.
You want to be thriving.
Yes, exactly.
Not just surviving. Yeah. And when you speak about the pesticide use, and these pesticides that are banned in the EU are actually produced in the EU, and then they're shipped and sold to us. So they themselves don't use these pesticides. However, we are here buying them and using them, and we don't realize that if they're not using it, then why are we using it? If something is not consumable or on their radar and is not allowed into their country, then and they're protecting their people, why are we still using that here? And these questions that we should be asking ourselves today. Why are we feeding our child? There's education, and then there is not I wouldn't call it uneducated, but ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. There's always that term that I've heard many times, right? But now, ignorance is not bliss. You want to know where your vegetables are coming from. Ask the questions. Every time I go shopping now, I ask the questions. And exactly what you said about the fruits being so difficult to grow. So I bring my own apples whenever I travel. I literally carry my own apples back with me, like a suitcase full of apples. Half a suitcase of mine would be full of apples, because I don't let my kids eat apples that are in the supermarkets here, because they're not organic apples. And I know you guys recently just had some organic apples, and I got so excited when I saw your video, and I was like, I need to buy some organic apples. And the reason for that is because I know how important it is not to eat those apples, and how important it is, especially something like our apples, to eat them organic. I actually found out that from the time an apple is plucked off a tree, or wherever it is from South Africa or the US or wherever, and by the time it gets into the supermarket here in Nairobi in Kenya, it's been 6 months. 6 months.
It's just not how food is meant to be.
Exactly. So the fact that it's been 6 months and it still looks perfect. I can go away for 2 weeks on vacation, come back and leave that apple there and it still looks perfect. How can that be food? How can that be good for me? And then they put that little shining coating on top, that residue on top again. They put that on lemons, they put that on apples. And then you're consuming that. How can that really be good for me? It's so important. Food is your medicine, but unless and until you don't treat it as your medicine, it can actually be your poison.
That's so true. And I think what you're saying is like this, we just got such a disconnect now, because if you don't shop on Greenspoon, obviously, then you have to go to a supermarket. And in a supermarket, you're just so far away from the farm or the origin of the food. And remembering that we're part of nature, we're made up of nature, we're made up of the microbes on our skin and our gut. And I love this idea, like you're a walking organism, actually, because you have so many good bacteria on and in you, but they all need you to make the right decisions as well. And I think this is the thing, the whole idea around food systems is recognizing that we might have just gone too far, and we need to start clawing back to a more connected kind of existence with food.
Yeah.
And not just see it as fuel, like it's doing a whole lot of other stuff to your body when it gets in. So it's important to make those choices and just bringing in an amount of consciousness, I think, already will start to shift the needle for anybody who hasn't been thinking about this before. Just starting to ask those few questions will start to shift the way you look at things.
I agree with you totally. And honestly, it's about time. It's about time we ask these questions, we share and shift these needles. I know that you are a big believer in, like, would you be able to give me a few more details about the pesticides, the type of pesticides that they use here?
So, yeah, this is a conversation that we've had with the people at COAN, which is the Kenya Organic Agricultural Network, and the people at CAPI, who produce a natural pyrethrum pesticide. And there are some pesticides, like everybody probably will have heard of glyphosate, which has just been the banning of glyphosate has been overruled in the EU. So that's a bit in the balance. Like, is that as dangerous as some people claim? Is it the way it's being used? I don't know. I'd rather just avoid all chemicals personally, but this is something that I guess the scientists would have better answers to. But the one that I think really drove me about 2 years ago was learning about this chemical called chlorpyrifos, which is used quite a lot in rose farms actually. But of course, it's very effective. And if you're a farmer that wants quick results, it's going to it's going to help you out with that. But this is something that you find quite widespread on tomatoes, and it affects the brain health of unborn babies.
Wow.
Now that really scares me. That
Oh my
really
God.
scares me, because if you can think about yourself in the here and now, but you need to. We also need to consider future generations, and if I'm pretty sure when Saskia was in my tummy, I ate some of those kind of tomatoes.
Exactly, because we didn't know anything better.
Didn't know anything better, had no access to anything better. And that really worries me, actually. But it's done now, but now we can take action. So, there's something like chlorpyrifos out there. There's quite a number of different pesticides in this amazing report done by Root to Food, which is a Kenyan-based report. And what we have to remember is some of these chemicals are affecting us directly, but a lot of the chemicals are affecting the world around us, which eventually does affect us, right?
Yes.
So it's, it might be affecting the soil, it's going into our water systems, it's affecting the birds and the bees and the bugs and everything around us, some of which we really need. We need this biodiversity. We shouldn't kill everything in sight if it's, if it's doing a job, essentially. So with these kind of chemicals, I think, it's just the same as what we're talking about with food. We're all connected to nature. It's not about, we can't just say we're a human and I'm eating this food and I'm not going to be affected by the health of the river over there. And I don't mind that there's a farmer spraying all sorts of stuff 2 shambas away, because that's also going to drift onto my shamba. So I think, this conversation around pesticides is quite urgent now.
It is.
It's becoming just too dangerous. And as one of my, as my cousin said to me, actually, she's in this kind of space as well. She said, the hardest thing about this message is that you don't eat a tomato and fall over.
No,
right?
exactly.
You don't eat a tomato and break out in terrible spots or
Exactly.
something. It's something that builds in your system. And it could be, depending on your genetic makeup, depending on everything else in your body, you could be affected in months or you could be affected in years. You might not see this till you're 60, 70, 80 or something, and then you develop some awful cancer or something. And then it's also hard to pin down, why did you get that disease? It's not always clear. Sometimes it's terrible bad luck. But I don't want to take chances with chemicals, because some of these highly hazardous pesticides are being shown in scientific studies to have these kind of effects. So why
wait?
Why play roulette with that?
Yeah, exactly. Why wait till the symptom shows up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And this thing of food is medicine.
Yes.
Food is medicine, but it's just so important to understand what food, and to understand yeah, I mean, like you could break it down to, it's definitely not medicinal to have junk food every day.
Of course.
And order in. Balance is really key with all the nutrients that you're going to be getting. But then we have to think, with all these chemicals and pesticides being used, how nutrient dense are our vegetables and fruits now?
Exactly.
Because if we use a lot of pesticides, we tend to really strip down the soil quite a lot as well. And I have a lovely fact here about soil, which is a single teaspoon of rich garden soil can hold up to 1 billion bacteria.
Wow.
Right? Yards of fungal filaments. And I don't know if you've read the book about mushrooms and fungus.
Yes.
And how they communicate.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Magic.
Fantastic fungi.
Several thousand protozoa and scores of nematodes. Right? So if we're dousing that with chemicals, it's going to die.
Yes.
So then what are our plants how are our vegetables and fruits growing? They're just growing from chemical inputs. They're not growing from what's actually in the soil.
Exactly. They've lost all their minerals. They've lost all their nutrients completely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to speak a little bit more about soil, the soil health. A lot of people are aware of pesticides and the use of pesticides, but many people don't understand how it's affecting our soil and how our soil is so important for our livelihood. The soil of the planet is directly connected to our gut microbiome. And we come from soil and we're going to go back into soil. Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing, soil.
Yes.
I mean, when you get your hands into it and get it under your nails, it's you feel this connection. So I think with soil, I get very scared when I talk to Farmer Max, for instance, who loves to tell me we've only got 60 years left of farmable soil on the planet.
Oh my God.
That's pretty scary. When you have kids and you think, well, Saskia's going to be 10 and next week, and so when she's 70, there won't be any farmable land left. So the amazing thing, I think, is that soil can recover quite quickly. But at the moment with farming, there are just too many chemicals going into the soil, right? So things are being killed. If you're going to kill pests above soil, you're going to have an effect on any biodiversity under the soil. And we really need the worms. We need everything that lives in the soil because they also help create more nutrients. And the nutrients then help grow the plants that we want to eat. So I think understanding that all of this is connected, we just have lost touch with it. We look at maize meal or something and we forget that it's come from a plant that requires sun and water and soil. And yes, there are some amazing innovations going on around hydroponics and vertical grow farming and so on. But in the end, we still, I think, my belief is that it's better to get fruit and veg that come from natural growing conditions. And so soil is just so obviously completely key to that. So that's also where, if you start to ask these questions, you're going to have an effect in the end on soil health.
Yes.
And the other great thing with decent, strong and healthy soil is that when we go into drought conditions, that soil tends to maintain plant health for much, much longer. So we've just seen it. I know in the introduction you mentioned like our little regenerative shamba. It really is tiny, but we use 3 pigs as tractors.
Amazing.
And we move them around the plot. So they and then they end up being in our freezer, and we bring in another 3. And what they've done to the soil has just been incredible. So they've dug it up and they've messed around in it and they've done everything they've done in it, and then they move on. And we let it rest for a bit, and sometimes we'll put our chickens across it as well because they have different nutrients in their poop. And then we plant grass, and that grass is insanely amazing.
Wow.
And then when it's really dry, we also don't see the same drying out that we saw even 2 years ago. So it's relatively quick, the effect that it's had, but it has to be quite deliberate if you're managing land. You have to really think about it, and you have to apply some methodology. How are you going to use those animals as part of the food system to regenerate the soil, for instance? And when we see that with our eyes, this is one of the things that Wiz and I thought, like when we have the shamba, we can actually try to practice what I preach all the time and really understand how hard it is. And it isn't easy to grow fruit and veg organically, which is what we do at home. But it's also because we're not trained in it and we're kind of guessing our way. But when I speak to people like Sylvia from Sylvia's Basket, Martin from Koan and so on, the organic farmers are absolutely nailing it. They're getting it right.
Yeah.
And they are also seeing much better crop health during harsher climate conditions because they're looking after their soil.
Yeah. And I know that Sylvia also mentioned, and that really blew me away, and I have to mention it here too, is in your podcast when she mentioned about the onions and how when an onion is taken out, it has to have this whole process of drying before it is sold. But because farmers want to get it on the shelf and on the market and sell it very quickly, they spray it with all these chemicals that help it fast dry. And then they put it. So again, it's so important to know where you're getting your onions from. And when I heard that only, I was just like, wow. And then also the difference. A lot of people don't understand there's a huge difference between buying an organic tomato and buying a tomato that is full of pesticides. Yes, the tomato that's full of pesticides is going to be perfect. It's going to be red. It's going to be round. It's going to look the part. But is it really going to even taste the part? The other one, you'll find different shapes and sizes. And I get that problem at home also. I have that issue with my staff. They're like, Mama, the tomatoes are not good. They don't taste nice. They have this, they have a funny color. They have all of this. And even just educating my staff at home, like, no, this is an organic tomato. This is not an organic tomato. Just on that, on its own, just the difference between those two is something that even my staff, even the locals, everyone needs to be educated on this platform from day one because they don't get what organic actually means and what it really entails.
Yeah, I think that we've been really conditioned.
Yeah.
And that conditioning comes through advertising, it comes through the way that we were brought up, right? We've been really conditioned to expect certain sizes, shapes, and colors from everything that we buy. And that's part of the problem with the food system as well, that we're also trying to sort of do differently at Greenspoon. But food systems, farmers will come to you and say, what quantities do you want and what are your specifications? So I remember having my first conversation. I was like, what do you mean specifications? A tomato is a tomato. He said, yeah, but some shops want them this size and other shops want them that size. And I said, well, what happens to the ones that aren't that size? Well, I don't have anywhere to sell them. Now that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And we've got amazing organizations like Farm to Feed who are trying to rescue any potential waste from farms because they don't meet those specifications. But come on, we've got to look at ourselves as humans. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And we see it a little bit with some customers who aren't prepared for what organic, how it could look different. So for instance, the onions are small. I've been cheated. We're like, no, we've weighed the kilo, like we're selling per kilo, not per onion. They are smaller, but they're still onions.
Exactly.
Okay, or for instance, when I did the Wambugu apple thing, they are not perfectly round. Sometimes they have a little mark on them. To be honest, it's not ideal to find anything on your fruit and veg, but it does indicate that there are no chemicals if you do see a worm or something. And at home, we just cut them out and crack on. And I understand some people just say like, I don't want that. I get that. I completely do. But understanding that organic is not always going to be uniformly perfect is the beauty of what you're buying. Look at that thing in your hands and think, that needed sun and water and great soil, and I am really looking after my body when I eat this misshapen, imperfect, but perfectly nutritious product. And that's why I think we struggle a bit because sometimes we get feedback where we're just not quite sure how to respond. We got some feedback the other day about sweet potatoes. They're long and thin and there's just no way these are organic. And we were like, This is the point. Okay, they look different to
Yeah.
conventional because they are organic. So that's something that we all need to talk about a bit more as well, and that we need greater narrative in the market around. We need more people to speak up and say organic's great even if it doesn't look fabulous.
Exactly.
It's what's inside that counts, just like us humans.
Exactly, right?
It's what's inside that counts.
It's what's inside that counts. And the thing is that we live in such an imperfect world, but yet we want our fruits and our vegetables and our food to look so perfect. We ourselves are not perfect. Every human being is different, yeah? Everyone has their own DNA. Everyone looks different, different shapes, sizes. So why are we thriving for that in our fruits and vegetables? You can have an imperfect potato, an imperfect apple, you can have an imperfect tomato, but it's not what is on the outside exactly. It's what's on the inside that counts the most. But now let's say if I had no choice, okay? Somebody will be like listening to me going, oh, okay, I actually don't have a choice. I have to go and buy my fruits and vegetables from XY, and I don't know if it's organic or not. And they might tell me, yes, it's organic, and I just have to believe what they say. What can a person like that do? Like any tips or tricks of something that they can do?
So I actually just want to pick up on that the term organic gets bandied around
A lot.
and abused actually quite a lot. So just to be aware of that. But I think if you have no choice, the first thing I'm going to say is don't be a victim. Okay, you do have a choice. You are a citizen. You need to see your part, the part that you're going to play. So I think going back to that idea of asking the questions, that is the perfect place to start. So I'm just imagining that I lived, because in Nairobi we have quite a lot of choice, but I think when you move out of Nairobi, perhaps the choice becomes a little bit less. And I'm trying to imagine myself, even in Gilgil, going to, we have a lovely lady called Veronica Veg, and we also have some supermarkets. And I'm trying to imagine myself asking those questions, right? I'm not going to get a perfect answer. And if you say, is it organic? You've just given them the answer. They're going to say yes. But if you say, where has this come from? That's much wider open question. Where's it come from? And this is what I faced before I started Greenspoon. I was asking at the meat counter in the big supermarkets, where's this meat coming from? And I don't blame anyone, but it just wasn't in anybody's mind to be able to answer that question. So they would just say, I don't know, I think somewhere in the Rift Valley. Okay, that's not a good enough answer for me. I'd like a bit more information. So I think it's step by step. But, if I was to go to someone like Veronica Veg and say, Veronica, can you please find out for me where's this maize coming from? Because remember that food systems here rely on brokers, and there's often 2 or 3 brokers between farm gate and where you're going to buy that fruit or veg. And so that information is hard to come by. But if you start asking, she's going to ask, probably the person who's brought her that veg, they're going to start to look for the answer, potentially, right? If there are enough of us that start asking.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to test at home.
Yes.
And actually testing is really expensive. We sometimes do it. Like if there's a customer complaint, we let the supplier know, we ask them for answers. Maybe they've changed something that they're doing on the farm. And then if we're worried, we'll send that product off to Crop Nuts for a test. But that's 19,000 shillings for one test. Your average smallholder farmer can't afford that.
Yeah.
And it's not something I'm going to be doing in the home. That's way too much money. So there aren't any home testing kits, but I think it's really important to wash your fruit and veg before you consume it. And if something tastes funny, then don't sit there like a victim. Go tell the person you bought it from. And especially if it's us, we really find this feedback really important, right?
Yeah.
Tell us, something weird with this. It didn't taste right. And then we will do the investigation. We will go and find out what happened. We had it just the other day. There's no issue with pesticides or so on and so forth, but we're still trying to get to the bottom why the taste was a little bit different. I think it's something to do with how it's been harvested and then packed. But that's something that now the supplier is really aware of. Oh my God, a customer actually complained about this. This is not something we want for our brand and so on. So we give a lot of support on that side, but that's what I think as a consumer you can do. It's don't feel passive in this. We are citizens of the world. We have to be the change. We have to ask the questions. and we have to look after just do it selfishly, do it for yourself, and then it will have a snowball effect, a ripple effect.
And this is the thing that I always ask the whys to even my kids. I always tell my kids also to ask the whys. You know, don't be ashamed of asking why. Why is this like this? Why is this tomato like this? Well, you know, why should I eat this? Is there what are the nutrients in here? It's really good to keep questioning everything that you are doing. At the end of the day, if you treat your body like a temple, you're going to make sure that every single thing that goes inside it is good for you and is doing something good to you, right? I just hope that with everything that we've spoken about today and with all of this information that you have shared, that this knowledge is actually shared and people do wake up and there is more of a ripple effect through this and there is more of an awareness, because at the moment I feel like it is so important to bring biodiversity back into our environment, into our soil, into our food, into our ecosystem, into the way we live our lives today, just bringing back a little bit more consciousness into all of that. I really want to start my own shamba. I really want to start my own farm. I just have a few issues with where I live at the moment and stuff and everything, but that's like something that has always been part of my purpose. I feel like part of what I really want to do is give back and teach my kids from this age, and I'm pretty sure that you do that already with yours, is how we can actually live sustainably just by growing our own fruits and vegetables at home. And if we don't have the facilities, at least we can empower ourselves with the knowledge and go and find the right resources and find the right people to give us this. So honestly, everything that you have shared today is so beautiful and it's so impactful. And I feel like I've just learned so much from just listening to you.
Thanks, Pooja. Yeah, 100%. I love the idea of having your own shamba, because I've noticed with my kids that they're much more willing to eat all sorts of things because they've been involved in planting or harvesting. You know, they bring the carrots and then I say, should we make the tops into pesto? And they're quite excited about that. Yeah, like, what's it going to taste like? Well, let's do it and let's make it. And then they actually really want to eat it. So go for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go for it. I might try that pesto. Sounds interesting. So my last question I wanted to ask you is, what is your wish for the world?
So I really thought about this, and there are two things that I think are really sort of central to how I'm looking at things in the world today, and that I wish for everybody to take on board. So the first is that food can change the world, and food systems can change the way that we regenerate the planet and we look after it for future generations, but they can also really affect you on your own sort of personal health. And the second is that every shilling you spend is a vote for the kind of world you want. So think about it. Think about how you're voting and think about the ripple effect that spend has, the message that you're sending out to the world. Are you sending out the message that I really care about my food and I will support organic farmers? And sometimes I appreciate that it doesn't look perfect or that it's not available because it's not the season. Or are you sending out the message that I demand that I always have X, Y, and Z, and I don't care how it's been grown as long as it looks perfect, and never mind even about the taste. So just thinking about the power that you have with every single shilling that you spend, I think is something that we all need to take on board and try to make central to the way that we live. And my wish for the world is to, I just have visions of this amazing planet that we live on, and we're so lucky to live on, having fewer floods and fewer fires and fewer climate disasters that we're starting to see now, because we're all going to take action and we're going to regenerate the planet and we're going to make it the beautiful place to live that it deserves to be. That's my wish for the world.
That's so beautiful and such a beautiful wish, and I hope your wish comes true.
Thank you, Pooja.
It was so funny. I think I heard someone, I don't know where I heard this before, but if we all were wiped out, then the planet will flourish again.
That's right. So it's not really about saving the planet, it's about saving humanity.
they'll all survive without us. They'll do absolutely fine without us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much for today. It was beautiful. Very grateful for you to be here and super, super honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Pooja. I appreciate it very much.